What's up, guys? We are back here with another episode of Nothing because I'm not Jimmy Rants right now. I'm doing an interview with the bearded man himself. There's Trent Holbert.
Right here.
So you might know him from the cupping sessions. We've done a few of those with him so far on videos. So he is going to interview me for his podcast. So I thought since we're in the same room together,
Yes.
up close and personal on the microphone here.
Wait.
No. That we would bring you guys in so you can hear what's going on. He's going to interview me about my new book called Keto Clarity Cookbook. And it's coming out on Tuesday. So you guys game for that? Well, whether you're game for it or not, we're here. You can stay or leave, do what you want. But Trent's, it's his show. So we're gonna be leaning in, leaning out a lot to make sure that the sound is good for his podcast, Trent Holbert Fitness Podcast.
Yep.
TrentHolbertFitness.com.
Fit for the Kingdom podcast.
Sorry, Fit for the Kingdom podcast. See, he hasn't learned this little thing called branding, and you do the same brand across the board yet. So I'm messing with you. Yes, Fit for the Kingdom podcast, which is a fabulous podcast if you've never checked it out. Christine and I have both been on it a couple of times each. So it's a lot of fun. Go listen. It's a little bit different perspective than what you get in some of the other health podcasts that are out there because we go deeper than just health. So really happy about that.
Yep. So I'm really excited to get to podcast with you today, Jimmy. And while we're podcasting video, this is a first for me.
Yeah.
And so thanks for everybody for tuning in to this Instagram Live. And so it'll be an interesting one, I think, for my podcast.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So, guys, enjoy. We're going to go into formal mode. I'm going to be holding it with my right hand. So if you see me kind of leaning over, it means I'm talking into his microphone.
Yeah. All right. Well, so if you guys are ready, are you ready?
Yeah, rock on.
All right.
Let's do this.
So welcome to the Fit for the Kingdom podcast. This is your host, Trent Holbert, coming today with a very special guest because he's a special friend of mine. And I started out really as actually a very big fan of Jimmy Moore and the work that he has done over the years in the ketogenic lifestyle and educating the world in this way of eating. So before we jump into any of the subject or just talking about keto, let me just ask Jimmy how you're doing today because I appreciate seeing you.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Have a little bit of a cold today. We just got back from the low-carb cruise, and almost invariably after the end of the low-carb cruise every year, I get sick. I don't know if it's just the stress from leading it, the travel, just having to be on all week, all of that kind of cumulative. And then the food it's good food, but it's not quality food. And so all of that kind of adds up to my immune system's probably lower than it usually is. And so a little under the weather. So if I sound snotty today, there's a reason for that.
Travel's tough. I mean,
It
it's
is.
tough on
Well,
the body.
you've done some international travel lately.
Well, let me ask you, when you come back from all that travel, what do you typically do to recover?
I try to put the focus specifically on sleep first. So last night I have an Oura ring on, so it's this little biohacking ring, and I got 2.5 hours of deep. That was the best deep I'd had since I got home. And deep sleep and REM sleep helps with that recovery. So that's the first thing that I do. I also obviously clean up the food and get real tight on that. So I've been eating high quality food since I've been home to try to replenish some of the micronutrition we probably lost on the boat because some of that food, it tastes good, but it's just devoid of really good quality. And then just ease back into it. I think too many people come back from vacation or some trip like this and they don't really pay attention to, hey, that was stressful. Get back into it eventually. So I've still kind of been slow rolling it a little bit even after getting back. I know not everybody has the luxury to do that, but if you can, slow roll it back in.
Yeah, it takes quite a beating on your body.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'm familiar with that. So you saw where I was last night, maybe on Instagram. Did you see what I was up to?
What did you do?
I was in the sauna, man.
Oh, that's right. I didn't know if that was this morning or that's right. And you said I'm sweating buckets is what you said. Yeah.
So I find that to be a huge benefit to recovery from travel.
And I do love that, especially since I've been sick. I was in there. Of course, we're away from where my sauna is, so I'm going to come visit and get in his sauna.
You're always welcome.
Clean up the buckets first. Clean up those buckets.
Today's interview is a little bit different because Jimmy and I are also Instagram living on Jimmy's Instagram.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, so everything still sounds good, and listeners are not listeners, but watchers are coming in.
Well, I guess you're listening too on Instagram. So.
Video and audio. So it might be interesting that if they ask some specific questions.
Oh
we
yeah,
might
yeah,
throw
yeah.
those right
Please,
into the
yeah.
podcast.
You guys are a part of this podcast, so we'll get them in.
Jimmy, you've been listen. I'm gonna jump in here. You have been in the keto world for a long time. You and I've done some podcasting in the past together. Me on yours, you on mine.
Yep.
Talked quite a bit about keto, but it never hurts to rehash. It never hurts to go back. And I made a mention last night on my Instagram because you brought by a very special gift that we're going to talk about today. But this has been several years ago, actually, that I came across a book. I'm going to hold this up for everybody to see because if they're followers of Jimmy Moore, they probably know what this book is, Keto Clarity. And this has been one of those turning points in my life. This is what I like about this book, by the way. It's autographed by the man himself. So I can actually remember, this is no joke, I can remember the first introduction to Keto Clarity. It was not on your podcast. You were on, I believe it was the Dave Asprey. It was maybe a Bulletproof podcast.
Bulletproof Radio, yep.
And I was running, had my earbuds in, and I was running down the road because I when I run, I don't care what you running snobs think. I listen to music. It's better to listen to music or podcasts rather than me out of breath. So listening to a podcast that afternoon, and you and Dave had an interesting conversation. It was my introduction to you. But it was actually the Keto Clarity podcast. I mean, it was you were going through the points of the K, the E, the T, the O. And it changed my life. I had already failed twice at keto. I had tried it. I'd found keto working through my own diet issues and failed. I tried it and I failed because I wasn't educated. But once I found Keto Clarity and you disseminated that information on a level that I could understand, you really had to bring it down, didn't you, to get to my level?
Yeah.
But it changed my life, and since then, doing personal training and nutritional consultation, and people wanting to get into ketosis, I go back to Keto Clarity. I just go back there because it's so simple. So tell me a little bit about, or remind our listeners a little bit about the backstory and how you came to create this book.
Yeah, so it was 2012. I had been low carb at that point for about 6 years. So went low carb, or 8 years. Went low carb in 2004, and it's where I got famous for losing weight, yada yada. But I learned the principles of doing low carb and did that for a while, and then I started kind of hearing rumblings about nutritional ketosis. Volek and Finney, the big researchers in this realm, they had been talking about testing for nutritional ketosis using a blood meter, and of course all my layperson knowledge of that was you pee on the stick and it turned pink to purple. That was pretty much it back in 2011, 2012. But they talked about this meter that you could test for blood ketones, so I started testing blood ketones, which is ubiquitous now because there's Keto Mojo, Keto Coach X, along with the Precision Extra these days. Back then, all you had was the Precision Extra, and it was $5 to $6 a strip. Yeah. The strips today are about 50 cents to about $1.50, much cheaper. You're welcome, by the way. Well, all of us that paid the expensive price early on, now they're very easy to find. So I started testing, and I realized, even though I was low carb, I was not in ketosis. And there's even this common mantra today, Trent, that even some well-meaning medical doctors are saying as well, the only thing you have to do in order to get into ketosis is simply cut carbs. I'm like, you want to bet? I can go down to 20 and not be in ketosis. Yeah. It takes more than that. So I'm like, okay, let me test it. Let me tweak it. So I've forever been a biohacker, an N=1-er, doing all these things. So I said, why don't we do an N=1 of nutritional ketosis for 3 months? So that's what it started as. And then I had such great results within that 3 months. I'm like, why would I stop? Let's push it on to 6 months. And then obviously at the end of 6 months, it was still doing well. I'm like, let's do a full year. So 2012, 2013 was when I did that. And I was writing about it on my blog at the time. And it was some of the most watched stuff that I did. And I'm going, okay, there's something big happening here with this message that nobody else, because low carb had been around forever, but nobody was articulating nutritional ketosis. So I pitched it to my publisher, who had approached me literally in the middle of that experiment. They're like, hey, we like what you're doing. What do you want to write about? And the first thing I said was ketosis. I want to write a book about, I don't know, let's call it keto. Because it wasn't called anything at the time. Right. It was just the ketogenic diet, low carbohydrate, and all this kind of medical termy. And I'm like, let's just call it keto. And they're like, yeah, that's kind of a niche. We don't really care about that. Nobody's interested in that. I said, you're so wrong. But okay, what else? And so that's why I wrote Cholesterol Clarity first, which I'm very proud of that book, but my heart was in Keto Clarity. That's my baby. And so it came out. They did finally give me the chance to write that book. It came out in 2014 and just outsold Cholesterol Clarity immensely. And they're like, oh, people want to hear about keto. Okay. And it kind of started this whole keto revolution. Why I was able to figure it out and nobody else, I don't know, but I'm very grateful every day that book has sold about 500,000 copies and has been translated now into 18 different languages. And in 2020, they're going to let me revise and update it and expand it and have fresh new moment of clarity quotes and fresh new recipes and just give it a whole makeover. Now that everybody and their mama is a keto expert, we're going to go back to the original resource and try to update it with what's happened since I first wrote it.
Let me see if I can remember the KETO.
Okay.
Keep carbs low.
Yep.
Eat more fat.
Yep.
Test often.
Well, that's test ketones often. Yep.
Right. Test ketones often, and overdoing protein is bad.
Oh, he gets the star of the day. That is the KETO. People have loved that too, and which is one reason in the new book we decided to do that again, except have fresh new KETOs for each chapter. So when we get there, that was, I had to do that because everybody knew that.
Yeah, I created in my head. That's how I.
Well, he's a pastor, and so he's always got this like ABCs. So
the 3 points.
That's the way your brain works, right?
the 3 points. Just get it. Yeah. Actually, I'm such a horrible preacher. I don't even have a point.
No, there is no point.
There's no point. That's a postmodern preacher.
A hippy dippy preacher.
Let me ask you a question though, because you did Keto Clarity was your heart and it was your baby, and they wanted you to do Cholesterol Clarity. How do you write a book your heart's really not in?
So my heart was in cholesterol because as soon as I lost the weight in 2004, went to see my doctor in January 2005, I thought he was going to just celebrate. Oh my gosh, 180 pounds lost. You're a star patient. And the first thing out of his mouth was, well, we need to check your cholesterol, when I told him I did the Atkins diet. And I'm like, I don't care what you think. Go, let's run my cholesterol, sure. And he was so worried about me, even though my triglycerides were like very low in the 40s, HDL was over 70, but my LDL and total cholesterol were out of the quote range.
Right.
And so I was glad we got it out there, because even to this day here in 2019, 6 years after that book came out, we still got people that worry about it. And I'm hoping that mantra is changing. But the fact that people still worry about it means we got a lot of work to do still. So it's a valuable resource, but how do I do it? I was so passionate about getting the word out and having this fresh opportunity with a major label to be able to write books. I was like, okay, if I impress them enough with this one, maybe they'll give me the keto book. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So Cholesterol Clarity is one of those that it's well, like you said, Keto Clarity overwhelmed. It really, it took off. But it's really, Cholesterol Clarity is still a very valid and very important book for today's times.
I'm very proud of it. It's actually seen a renaissance in the last couple of years as keto has caught on. The first thing people started worrying about was, what about my cholesterol? And people go, oh, if you love Keto Clarity, go back and read Cholesterol Clarity. It's my least selling book, but it's, to me, the most valuable one to somebody who's worried about their health. Right. Because if you get down the cholesterol thing, you stop worrying about saturated fat clogging your arteries, you stop worrying about all those lies that we've been told, then that kind of puts your mind at ease and you're able to start the healing process confidently.
Right. You can enjoy butter better.
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy butter better.
Before you couldn't enjoy butter.
That's right.
Unfortunately, because of misinformation, you would kind of, I guess, enjoy country crock, like margarine
or blue bonnet, or I can't believe it's not butter, but I can.
So people are, I guess, kind of enjoying something that's not good for them while missing out on things that are actually very good for you.
Well, and all under the guise of this is healthy. And that's the thing that saddens me the most, Trent, is people are buying products thinking they're doing something good for their bodies.
Right.
All under the auspice of a lie that it's gonna lower their cholesterol or whatever it's supposed to do, and they're buying into health claims without actually looking it up. Now, in this day and age with the internet, with social media, information at your fingertips, that's kind of irresponsible of people to not do their own research. So one thing I tell these guys on Instagram all the time is, yeah, you've got this goofball on here that talks to you all the time, but please don't take anything I say at face value. If something sounds off, you go look it up.
Right.
And then if you look it up and you're like, okay, it sounds off, but it's right on, then good, you learned something. But if it's off, call me out. I want to be told where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not infallible by any means, but I try to vet out stuff that's of interest that's going to actually help people. I'm not trying to sell you something other than books.
Right. Well, and I think too, I mean, that just shows a lot of character, and I think we need to have character today. We need to have the humility when we're wrong to admit we're wrong and move on and accept it. But actually, almost to the point of celebrating it, like you now have the right information. You don't want to live your life with the wrong information. And not on the topic of keto, but the other day I was listening or watching a YouTube of a guy that I appreciate in the exercise science industry, and he's got so many followers, hundreds of thousands of followers just look up to him, and they're swallowing everything, ingesting all the information that he puts out, and he came out and said I was wrong, like on this specific subject,
right?
And it had to do with rep volume. And he said, the studies have come out, the science has pointed to this, and so if I'm going to be a man of character, then I'm going to admit it and change my view.
We've seen this happen in South Africa as well. Professor Tim Noakes, when he learned about the low-carb message. Tim Noakes was a legend in the running world.
Yeah.
The lore of running is he's like the keto clarity of running. And he now, in his books, tells people, tear out the nutrition information because I was dead wrong. Right. All the running technique and all that stuff, keep it. But don't pay attention to what I said about nutrition back then. So that's integrity.
Yeah, that shows a lot of integrity. And so I appreciate, and if the day ever comes, I don't think it's going to, that people just start dropping dead. And it was predicted that I would drop dead from being ketogenic. I haven't yet.
By whom?
Lots of people. When I started ketosis, this has been a long time ago. This wasn't when it was popular. It wasn't in vogue at the time. And I was also coaching in a CrossFit box. You do not do keto and do CrossFit, right? So
that's what they say.
That's what they say. And I was told straight to my face, you cannot do that. You will die. I had people in my church that would say the same thing. They would come and say that now, of course, you have to understand, back then, a lot of people hadn't heard of keto. But
what year was that?
9 or 10. No, not that far back. I apologize. That would have been 12.
Oh, say 2012.
Yeah.
So yeah, the paleo world was kind of ruling the roost in the CrossFit world at that point.
It was. Everything was paleo, which I was.
There was a subset in there that was doing low carb paleo.
I was paleo,
right?
Because I'm dealing with health issues and I'm trying to establish better health through nutrition. So I found paleo and mitigated a lot of health issues, a lot of weight issues, etc., but still continuing to further myself in education and what works better, and found ketosis. And the only word that people heard was ketoacidosis.
Of course.
And so as soon as I brought up ketosis, it was the immediate, well, you're going to die, it's ketoacidosis, and so you had to go through and all of that, dispel all of the misinformation there. So anyway, I don't think that I'm not going to predict that there's going to be a bunch of us that just fall over dead, but
would have already happened.
I
mean, you think about, I've been doing low carb 15 years. When's it supposed to happen?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's supposed to be this progressiveness of disease onset, when is it supposed to happen? We just got off the low carb cruise, and Jackie Eberstein was the registered nurse for Dr. Atkins. The year I was born, she started working for him. I remind her of that often. I was just a baby when you started. But that's been 45 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, when is all this dastardly stuff supposed to happen? And I think it helps the consumer to think that through a little bit. It's one thing I try to remind people often is, if it's as bad as they think it is, why aren't we seeing bodies lining up on the street? Because as of January, they said about 50 to 55% of the population is trying some form of a ketogenic diet in 2019. Now, most of those people dropped out by January 7th, but they tried it at least for a period of time. And so it's very odd. One good thing about this keto movement has been, with the awareness, some of that ketosis versus ketoacidosis and other kind of common issues that have been the plague of the low carb world is starting to go by the wayside. People are realizing, oh, now I understand it. So I don't think those excuses are working near like they used to.
Yeah. Well, I try to, and on this podcast, educate my listeners. We want to talk about ancestral living, and we want to be responsible with all of the information, all of the data. And one of the first things that my mother, when I went into ketosis, she said, well, Jesus ate bread. And so really what I try to help people
But not Wonder Bread, he didn't.
Well, that's exactly what I did. She had a loaf of bread. It was seated. I can't speak now.
It was seated?
It was sitting there between she and I flipped it over and read the ingredients, and guess what one of the first ingredients was?
Refined white flour.
Well, refined white flour was the first one, and then high fructose corn syrup. I don't think Jesus ate that kind of bread. But one of the things that we talk a lot about is metabolic flexibility.
Yes.
And understanding that the keto diet is not a fad diet, it's just ketosis is just a natural metabolic state of the body.
Babies are born that way.
Babies are born that way, and if you're ever fasting, and quite well, I did a 30-day fast, and my body was quite capable of producing its own glucose and surviving.
Yep.
So that's 30 days without not only carbs, but without food.
Right.
And I'm still alive, very healthy. And so anyway, I talk to people, I try to educate people in understanding that we live in a different world today. It's just different. And when you were living 2,000 years ago and you're walking the hills of Galilee with Jesus and his disciples or whoever in the first century, you're literally, and I mean this, naturally going from carbs to, glucose to ketosis.
You'd have to.
Throughout the day.
Because of all the walking.
You're not eating the refined carbs.
Right.
You're not eating the high amounts of sugar. You're not living a sedentary life. Your body is actually designed to go from burning glucose to burning ketones dependent on the energy needs. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So I like to look at ketosis not as it's the latest and greatest diet craze on the magazine at the checkout counter. It's just natural. It's ancestral.
It's normal.
It's normal.
I think that's the thing that's been lost in this whole conversation. People want to think ketones in the blood is just abnormal. No, ketones in the blood was how we lived most of our lives from biblical times to about 50 years ago. And it wasn't until the advent of, oh, well, fat's bad, and then we cut down on this very thing that kept us healthy, increased the very thing that rose unhealthiness, and now we have chronic disease coming out of our ears, and we don't know what's going on. It must be overconsumption. It must be under fitness. We're doing all the things to try to excuse the big mistake we made a half century ago.
Right, and so using ketosis now long term, we're not saying that, because we know that thousands of years ago people weren't ketogenic long term. They had the metabolic flexibility to be in both. But with the issues that we have today, it's an advantage to be long term in order to reverse, using ketosis as a therapy, metabolic therapy. And so then it for me, here's an example. I've got autoimmune disorder, hereditary angioedema. Look it up. It's very rare. It's horrible. There's not a whole lot of information or help out there for it. But I can tell you one thing that I've found
ketosis helps.
Is it puts it into remission.
Nice.
So there's...
So he doesn't cheat, by the way. Not often, anyway.
I'm one of the most strict people that you probably...
He's one of those.
I can tell you, because if I don't, I'm very unhealthy. It's if my autoimmune gets triggered, it could be fatal, actually.
And that's self-awareness. I love that you do this to control the autoimmune. Most people are also under the misinformation that it's just a weight loss diet. And a lot of people need to lose weight, obviously. But I think what we're seeing with keto is different than some of the other diets that have gotten out there and been popular. It's not really about primarily weight loss.
Right.
It's about health. And yet people still want to make it about weight loss. And I get that as someone who still has weight on the body, but you want to be healthy on the inside. And some of the biohacking and other things can help with the weight on the outside.
Yeah. Good point. Because every diet that you look at is a diet for weight loss. Pretty much, primarily, that's what you're going to find. Whether it's Zone, whether it's Atkins, whether it's the Whole30, and all those are good. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, but they're diets that are primarily targeting weight loss.
Right.
Whereas a ketogenic diet, it does provide weight loss, but my goodness, it was the studies found in the 20s for childhood epilepsy.
Right.
And then from there on out, what are some of the therapies that it's used for that you're aware
Oh
of?
my gosh, it's so many. Well, I mean, let's even go to the 1980s when Steve Phinney was looking at it for the purposes of exercise performance.
Yeah.
That's something that's not a disease, although some people would call it a disease. It's not a disease to want to be faster as a runner, to be stronger as a bodybuilder, but he wanted to test it. And he found that there was this adaptation period. That's why we now say there's 2 to 4 weeks to get adapted to burning ketones efficiently, and then you're keto adapted, and then your performance goes back up to where it was when you were a sugar burner and you're eating no carbs at all.
Right.
So I think that is one of the big ones. And we're seeing a lot of research coming out from Jeff Volek and his team in that realm. Cancer's one that's really fascinating to keep an eye on. When we originally wrote Keto Clarity, we called it an emerging field of science. Well, it's full on actively being studied now. And the results are kind of mixed so far. There are some cancers that are very glycolytically demanding that it does well with. Mm-hmm. And then there's some cancers that actually get fed by ketones, which is why I'm one of the few that's trying to be cautious about, let's not say that ketosis is the answer for cancer just yet. Some, yes, but let's vet that out fully rather than making a blanket statement. But a lot of the neurodegenerative diseases, obviously type 2 diabetes and PCOS, metabolic syndrome, all of those things tend to get better when you get into nutritional ketosis.
Yeah. So just seeing it then as a health protocol, I'd much rather see ketosis be seen as a health protocol than a diet.
Right. And so one of the other things that's coming up now is instead of like identifying a diet, well, I'm keto, or I'm paleo, why don't we eat the proper human diet? Maybe it's a future bestseller, the PhD diet, the proper human diet. What does that mean? It means foods that will nourish you, foods that will give you all the nutrients that you need, macro and micro, foods that make you feel good, and it doesn't have a philosophy that is based on anything other than what makes you healthy. It's probably the most bio-individual diet that you could possibly think of, because if you think the proper human diet is a vegan diet, and you decide to do that and you get great results, guess what? That was the proper human diet for you. If it was a meat-based carnivore diet like what I'm doing right now, maybe that's what will work for me, then that was the perfect human diet for me. If someone else wants to have a mixed diet, same thing. But the key in all of that is taking away the identification of being on some plan. I think sometimes people pigeonhole themselves into, I'm keto, and that if anything strays from that, and I know you do some different kind of protocols, sometimes even in your keto, that some keto people would go, whoa. So I think we take away the judgment somewhat as well when you don't identify with some preconceived notion of a diet.
Yeah. I'm so sick of labels.
Yeah, the labels is what's killing any trend that could be good.
And we're trying to protect labels more than we are people.
Yeah, I don't really care about keto. I know that's shocking to hear from a guy that has 5 books on keto.
Hold on, I'm going to quote that.
Yeah, please quote that in the show notes, because I don't think keto is the goal.
Right.
Getting people healthy is the goal.
Right.
And if it means we get people on keto to get them there, great. But I want people to be healthy by any means. And sometimes keto alone's not enough. So that's why we talk about adding in other things, fasting, infrared sauna, HIIT therapy, any of these things, cupping like what you do. All of those things are healing for the body that are apart from the nutrition.
Yeah. Well, so my listeners, and now your listeners are watching, so check this out. After I did an episode with Jason Whitrock, he and I talked about, and if you guys don't know Jason Whitrock, definitely go back and look at that podcast, or listen to that podcast that he and I did together. And you guys on Instagram, check out Jason Whitrock. He is bold, dude, when it comes to ketosis. He'll defend it, he'll defend his ethos there. And I appreciate, he knows what works for him. We talked about the targeted ketogenic diet.
Yes.
And here lately, for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been doing a new protocol for the summer. I'm doing a little bit of a cut, I'm doing early morning hypertrophy training fasted, right? And so a lot of your listeners might freak out when I say what I'm getting ready to say. So I'm having, after my workout, I'm having a bowl of oatmeal. And oatmeal's not keto, is it, right? I mean, air quotes here. It gets worse.
Uh-oh.
A bowl of oatmeal mixed with some craisins, so dried cranberries.
What? Talk about high fructose corn syrup.
Exactly. And sometimes a little bit of honey on there and a scoop of protein.
Okay, I'm out. Just kidding.
So
tell us why.
Well, okay, I'll tell you why.
Tell me the results, then the why.
And then I'm going to... The results, 1.4 ketosis. 1.4 millimoles.
I hate you, Trent.
So
in Jesus' name, I hate you.
So I'm testing my blood ketones.
Yeah.
I'm doing this postprandial. I'm carrying out. I wanted to see what is going to happen if I do this after the workout. And so, I'd get kicked out of ketosis if I did that at night. Long after the workout.
So you're saying the timing of it is what's important.
Exactly. So I'm doing this targeted ketogenic approach where in the morning I'm fasted. So what do we know is already depleted?
Right.
So
insulin,
liver glycogen, insulin is way low.
Right.
Muscle glycogen is low. And so I'm doing about an hour's worth of high repetition weightlifting, resistance training.
In a fasted state.
State. And so when I go and I get just a little bit of that insulin spike.
Yeah.
That we know
post-workout.
Okay. And we know that this has advantages toward muscle
growth, right?
But because I've already depleted even further,
you're still using that energy long after you're done with the workout.
Exactly. So
it seems so weird though for people because you've stopped actually moving, but people forget your body's still...
It's recovering.
Yes.
It's recovering.
Yeah.
It has to... It's
not recommended for everybody, by the way. I may try it just to say I tried it, but I would freak out.
No, and my point is that there are different approaches for different lifestyle demands.
Right.
If you're someone who... if you are someone who is more sedentary and not using resistance training in your program...
Then don't do this.
You wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
But in this event, and especially go look at Jason Whitrock and see and complain and say, oh, he's not keto.
Right.
But when I've got the blood test to show that I am keto, like here I am eating oatmeal after a workout and I'm staying in pretty good levels, right?
And it was 1.4 ketones. What was the blood sugar?
Let me think. I got to go back to I'm not wearing it today.
You got a CGM.
I took off my
flash glucose. Yeah.
So my blood sugar was stable in the 70s, 80s, and 90s is where I...
With the 1.4.
Yeah.
Which is good.
So
anything 60 to 100 is good.
Yeah, so all felt great, feel good, but that's the first time I've had carbs like that in years.
Did you like it?
Did I like it?
I'm going to interview him for a while, guys.
Honestly, it was a little bit spooky because we get into this...
Mentally, you're like, this is so wrong.
Right. Yeah. You're like, oh,
this can't be good.
I can't do this.
It's got high freaking fructose corn syrup in it.
So I'm working with the guy that you're going to meet in Barbados. I'm not going to mention his name yet because I'm going to bring him on my podcast.
Yeah.
He's a body... transformation specialist, a ketogenic body transformation specialist, and So he's the one.
He does this stuff too.
Yeah, I'm like, hey man, I just want to do what you suggest, and then I'm going to bring you on my podcast.
Yeah.
So that's coming up in July.
So you're doing a little recon before that interview.
Exactly. So we're going to talk about these results because it's so interesting to see that there are multiple avenues. To be ketogenic,
right?
We have to be sensitive to that, I think.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love the outside the box thinking. And I hate it when people say, well, X is not keto.
Yeah.
So be it a food, be it a technique, be it the protein or the fat or whatever. I just think, having those blanket statements doesn't help people. What helps people is, all right, guide them on how they can tailor a program that does work for them. So if they're like you and they're wanting to, and you're curious, and you should be, try new things, then maybe this targeted keto approach could be something to try. I definitely am going to work with Trent during my sabbatical and maybe do an experiment with that. I don't really care about the ketosis part of it. I want the fat loss part of it.
And mine will change, because when I finish this hypertrophy program, I'm going to go back to trail running. That's my passion.
Right.
I love to be a trail runner, and endurance running is I'm not going to need those carbs.
No.
Ketosis works for me much better. Well,
Speaking of Tim Noakes.
Right. I mean, so here's, when I'm running, when I'm in that lifestyle, it's running fasted, and it is very strict ketosis. Like there's no more than 20 grams of carbs a day, because I'm just able. When you're endurance training, it's just a different need.
But strength training is more glycolytically demanding.
And because we know that sugars they burn dirty, but they burn quick. Right. I mean, they're gonna burn quick in the body, and and it's done. And because I've already put the energy demand on the body, and with the glycogen stores being depleted, it just goes. It's used up.
Could you do the same thing by eating more protein? Because there is some glucose effects that would come from eating a higher amount of protein post-workout. Would you accomplish the same thing? Obviously not to the speed of eating carbohydrates like what you're doing, but surely extra protein on a day that you're lifting very heavy would do the same thing, just at a slower rate.
It would not have the same. It wouldn't have the same effects for a couple of reasons.
Okay.
And I'm all for high protein. I'm eating a lot of protein right now as well because that's important. But you have a short window post-workout that you're able to do this. If you wait 2 or 3 hours...
So you need that quick.
You need it quick. And so I will drop the weight, right, on that last rep, and I am
go right for the food.
Yeah, and getting it in, and that's going to spike quick.
What about the more insulinogenic protein? So we know, for example, chicken has amino acids in it that do respond pretty darn quick. I tested that and figured that out for myself last year. Hypoglycemia literally 45 minutes after eating chicken. So would that have an effect since your goal is raising insulin post-workout?
No, because the goal isn't just raising insulin, but it's to fill up the
glycogen stores.
You need the liver. So I'm doing a mixture of fructose and glucose.
Yeah. So that's why you're getting
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Can
you just eat fruit? Why the craisins? I don't get the craisins.
I like them.
Oh yeah, they taste good, dude. They have sugar in them. That's why you like them.
It's a quick.
Could you do a banana?
Sure. I could do an
Or
orange.
an apple, or any
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just pick a fruit. But
he chooses the worst fruit that he could. Craisins are not fruit. They're dried sugar.
But I want to fill up those liver stores and
fructose is the point.
Yeah, fructose and glucose for sure.
Gotcha. Now the Keto Savage would have great umbrance with what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's not a fan of having to do that kind of targeted ketogenic. Yeah. He doesn't think you have to do that to get those benefits. Yeah. You should bring Robert back on.
I know. And for me, it's just it's another one of those N=1.
Whereas Danny Vega would love what you're saying here. Yeah, we had kind of an interesting...
We're going to do a round table.
Yeah, literally, it would be great to have you and Danny and Robert and maybe Jason all on together and have a round table discussion, because they all have different views on this kind of topic of building muscle using ketones.
Well, I'll tell you, all three of those guys, I'm friends with and fans of all three, and I love to learn from all of them and listen to them. And that was, for me, was like, well, you've never done this. Try it and see.
It's an equals one.
That's all it is. That's
And
all
you're
it is.
thriving. That's all that matters. Back to what we were saying, perfect human diet. You're just figuring out something else that'll work for you. It's another tool in the toolbox. And plus, as a practitioner helping clients, you want to be able to say, hey, look, this is something I tried. I'd like to try it with you. And if it doesn't work, we'll move on to the next thing. So that's never a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, it's ever evolving. My health is evolving. My goals are evolving, and so
just don't stay in the sauna 90 minutes ever again.
Don't ever start a movie.
Watching a movie in a sauna. What were you thinking? What was the movie, by the way?
It was Blade. Wesley Snipes, man.
And it was a bad movie at that.
I thought, man, I haven't seen this movie since college.
Yeah, I know.
And so I turned it on, and then there's Chris Christopherson, and it's like, I'm into this movie again. And 90 minutes later, I'm like, I'm
dehydrated, yeah. Gee, I wonder why.
Oh, hey, let me switch gears, though. If you're going to embarrass me.
Of course, embarrass away. See, I only do this to my friends.
No, we could stay on that forever. That's a great topic, but something that you said, and I wanted to use that as a segue, was eating healthy food. The point is health. The point is, let's heal our bodies with food.
Yep.
And so it kind of, I don't know, to me it came out of left field because you wrote Keto Clarity, but you've written several books after that. You've written The Complete Guide to Fasting with Dr. Jason Fung.
Yep, 2016.
You wrote, help me, there's...
the Ketogenic Cookbook came right after Keto Clarity in 2015 with Maria, and that one was supposed to be called Keto Clarity Cookbook. But because keto was brand new, that was the very first book, Keto Clarity, that had keto in the title, they're like, well, there is no ketogenic cookbook yet. I'm like, all right, so we'll write the Ketogenic Cookbook. That's how that came about. But then everybody had books coming out at that point. And you had Simply Keto by Suzanne Ryan. You had The Keto Diet by Leanne Vogel. You had all these different people writing books. And we never got back around to Keto Clarity Cookbook till just last year. I'm like, can I please have the cookbook now? So that's why it took so long. The Keto Cure and Real Food Keto are the other two that both came last year.
I've got them all. And I suggest everybody go out and get those books and have in your library because...
Thank you. And the proudest one is Real Food Keto because I got to write it with my wife. That was a cool experience. But also, I don't think enough emphasis is put on food quality and all the micronutrition and some of the things she learned in nutritional therapy. I think we put so much emphasis on the wrong syllable when it comes to like only looking at macronutrients to the dismay of micronutrition.
Totally.
And I think we need more. And I'm beginning to see it more and more where people are focused on that, and even beyond diet stuff. I'm criticized pretty often because of my weight still, but I tell people there's more circumstances involved than just what you're putting in your mouth. Obviously, that's a big part of it, but there's other factors, which is why I think that's starting to catch on more.
Yeah, well, because there's a term, dirty keto. Is that what it is?
Dirty, lazy keto.
Yeah.
Which I hate.
I mean, because you can be ketogenic and be unhealthy. I mean, you can eat extraordinarily unhealthy
Those
food.
people eat Quest bars. They don't really care about food quality. And you can lose weight that way, for sure.
Okay, well, consider what we mentioned, some of those nasty oils, the partially hydrogenated plastic oils that are marketed, the vegetable oils that are out there. So you can use those oils and be in ketosis.
Sure you can't. Mayonnaise.
But here's the thing: one of the main reasons that people retain body fat, to maybe some of your all surprises, is inflammation in the body.
That's right.
And using those oils are one of the number one drivers of inflammation in the body. The oxidative stress, or the oxidized, those oils that oxidize and create oxidized stress in the body.
Yep. In Cholesterol Clarity, we called carbs and vegetable oils the twin villains in your health.
Yeah.
For that very reason you just described.
And I think a lot of people miss this point that, yes, you can be in ketosis, sure, but is it healthy ketosis? Are you healing the body? Actually, you're doing worse damage to your body.
Which is why emphasizing the ketosis might have been a mistake. And again, that's the keto guy saying that. It might have been a mistake to put so much emphasis on ketosis being the goal, whereas we should be putting the emphasis on here's a marker in your blood that should be a goal.
Yeah.
Triglycerides under 100, HDL over 50, HSCRP under 2, A1C under 5.5, insulin, fasting insulin under 10. Make goals of that kind rather than 1.3 on a blood ketone meter, which we now know there's some meters out there that overestimate the ketones. So when you prick your finger and you think you're doing pretty good on the Keto Mocho, for example, that 1.3 may not be a 1.3, and it may not really tell you anything about your health. So I think we're still learning. This is kind of the bad part about the keto world too, is all that we think we know, we've only scratched the surface of what we actually know.
Yeah. You probably remember not too long ago, I did another N=1 experiment, and I went vegan.
He's as crazy as I. Oh yes, he went vegan.
So I'm really crazy.
He went there.
But I went keto vegan. So I stayed keto while being a vegan. I don't like veganism. I'm all about treating animals.
You love your meat.
I do.
Yeah.
But I want it to be fair, and I just wanted to experiment and test, and I tested before, I tested during, and I tested after.
And
the entire time I'm ketogenic, but I tripled my triglycerides
because of the carbohydrate content. Well, what would it be?
No. It was what my theory is. A lot of the seeds, a vegan diet is very high in seeds and nuts. Which are a lot of those are roasted in hydrogenated oils.
Did you do any legumes or
soy?
I
did. I and as much as I hated to do it, but again, I wanted to be fair, and so tempeh. Yeah, I did some soy.
Yeah.
What's that nasty white tofu?
Nasty white. That describes a lot of things in veganism.
So I did the best that I could. Stay strict.
Did you do hummus at all?
I did hummus. But what I did, and in my blood testing, what I found was that I literally teetered in the reverse direction for omega-3 and omega-6 ratio.
Whoa.
So my omega-6 went way up. My oxidized LDL went up.
Yeah. Inflammation had to go up.
Inflammation went out of this.
Yeah.
It went, let's see, my HSCRP
went that's
from
the key one.
5 to 7 in 3 weeks.
Whoa.
3 weeks.
2 points in 3 weeks is major.
Tripled triglycerides in 3 weeks. And here's another takeaway. I tanked my testosterone down to a total testosterone level of 236. All right, but
in your mid 40s, early 40s, so
no,
that's not
hold
good.
on. I haven't reached 40 yet. What did you just say?
I'm trying to make him old, man. He's got the gray in the beard, so I'm trying to make him old.
But what does that say? I was ketogenic.
You had blood markers like you were old. There we go. You were ketogenic,
but I was not healthy.
Not healthy. What's your theory as to why the lack of animal proteins? Because there's essential amino acids that you were missing.
Man, I don't know. That's a good question. There's so many
micronutrients you were missing.
I can tell you that we talked about bioindividuality of eating, right? I think there are some that might thrive on a vegan keto diet.
Absolutely.
All I've wanted to know was, do I? And I found out.
Hard no.
I don't thrive at all on that.
Yeah.
But also, I don't thrive as well either on a carnivore diet. Carnivore keto.
Right.
Carnivore is keto, but.
Well, it can be and it can't be.
So just only eating meat and fat.
Right.
And so, yeah, the bioindividuality, you can be keto, you can still be unhealthy. That's the point.
Yeah. And that's true with any diet modality.
Right.
That it's not just limited to keto.
So you created this new project. It's getting ready to come out. I'm excited that I already got a copy, the Keto Clarity Cookbook. And it addresses really you wrote Keto Clarity, How to Get into Ketosis. Mm-hmm. And this is the real follow-up to that book, is it not?
It is.
And so the food that you have in here, and I was going through it last night, and I literally, this is no joke, I got giddy.
like a little girl.
Who gets giddy? There used to be an SNL skit with Mike Myers.
Yes, I remember.
He was the German.
See, he is 40-something, if he remembers that.
I'm not 40 yet. But he would say, I'm as giddy as a little girl.
Giddy as a little girl.
Yeah, so I'm reading this book and I'm like, oh my goodness, all
Yes.
this food looks. I'm flipping through it right now.
Let me brag on my co-author because Heather Russian is her name. I'm dropping the phone. Sorry, guys. So Heather Russian is my co-author. She's Heather's Real Food on Instagram, and I had been following her for a little while. And yes, there's Heather. And so I've been following her for a little while on her Instagram. She always had such beautiful food photography, and she was always about real food. And I thought, you know what? And then I saw that she did keto, and I'm like, hey, she had, 70,000 people at the time. I need a co-author that makes good food. She's never had a book before. Why don't we give her an opportunity? So I reach out to her, and I call her, and she's just like, Jimmy Moore's on the phone, and it was just funny. But once she got over, she's over me now. Just kidding, Heather. Once she got over that, she's like, hey, this sounds like fun. And I said, yeah, I need somebody I can trust to create recipes that will keep the vibe of what we tried to do in Keto Clarity without a bunch of junk. And as you'll notice in all the recipes, there's no junk. It's all real whole foods. There's no oat fiber to some recipe that you have to buy off of online somewhere. It's all real whole food ingredients. There's dairy-free options in there for those that have autoimmune conditions that you can't have dairy. There's also, what did Heather say? 98% of the recipes are nut-free as well because her husband has a nut allergy, so she's cognizant of that. So very proud to team up with her, and really wish her well with this book as well.
I need to get her on the show.
Yeah.
And yeah, that
She's a darling.
Awesome. Oh, I bet. Well, that the food does look beautiful and healthy. I try to do this 80%. I think if you can do anything 80%, you're winning, right? Like anything positive.
Right.
If you're shooting for 100%, you're probably gonna not live in good space. Right. But I try to name every ingredient that I'm eating. So, for instance, my lunch today, if you want to know, if you're interested in my lunch.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I had a half of a chicken breast.
Yep.
But that's all it was chicken breast. I had a half a cup of Brussels sprouts.
Okay.
And I had 4 ounces of mozzarella cheese.
No butter, no other sources of oil?
The chicken was cooked
in butter.
It was cooked in what was that? I think you actually gave it to me.
Ghee?
It was a avocado oil.
Oh, okay.
And so because I'm watching, even right now, I'm in a cutting phase, and so
I'm
watching
so not as much. Okay.
Right, and and then I have spices.
Right.
So the spices are Redmond's pink Himalayan sea salt.
That's good stuff.
So and that was it. And anyway, so all I'm saying is I try to live so that I can name all of my ingredients.
Nice.
When I read this book or when I look into this book and I go through the ingredients, typically what I find is the same thing. Like, well, this is just whole food.
Right. By design. I can't write a book called Real Food Keto right before this one and then come right around with the very next book and have a bunch of weird ingredients.
Right.
That would be inconsistent, and actually I'm not that kind of an author.
Well, but what I think makes it so good, though, is because people who don't have a lot of time,
yes,
they want to fix good, whole, clean meals.
Right.
And you've created a book based on the principles of eating a ketogenic diet and whole food keto that makes it simple.
Yep.
People's biggest complaint is not knowing.
It's hard.
Yeah, not knowing how to.
And I can't cook all those recipes and those kinds of things, which I get. And I'm right there with people. I'm the kind of person that I don't really need a bunch of recipes. You give me hamburger meat, you give me cheese, and you give me butter, and I can be a happy man for a very long time.
Right. We don't need a whole.
No. Very monolithic, and a little bit of eggs.
I can appreciate someone that can really put together a big, something that takes a lot of work. But if I'm cooking, I use the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid.
Sure. By the way, did you notice in the recipes as you flip back through them, something we did that has not been done in any other keto cookbook that has come out? We did something very dramatic. Let's see if he notices.
Oh.
Did you notice?
He
just got it yesterday, so I'm putting him on the spot.
Daggone you, Jimmy. It's like, where's Waldo?
So, yes, it's where's Waldo, but then when I tell you, you're going to go, oh, of course. Where's the nutrition information for the recipes?
The nutrition information. Let me pull it. Let me hold this up here. Habanero Brussels sprouts. You get the servings, you get the prep time, you get the cook time.
Yes.
You get the ingredients.
Yes.
Okay. The instructions.
Yes.
Okay.
There is none.
So that's it.
There is none. By design.
Okay, tell me about it.
Heather and I both came to the conclusion that one of the things that we think is hampering people in keto is obsessing over macros, is obsessing over calories, is thinking that they have to count every little morsel of every little thing. And we know this is a risk in a cookbook about keto. Trust us, guys. We put in the effort. We know all of these fit them. We can look at the food and see exactly what's in it. And you can see all the ingredients. It ain't junk. So you kind of know it's keto. And I think if we got away from the notion of feeling like we have to hit some arbitrary percentage or macro total or thing like that, if we got away from that and just ate intuitively, which is my heart, it's Heather's heart, I think that's where we're trying to push people towards. Now, we know right now we're going to get a bunch of 1-star reviews because we don't have any macros listed. But there's so many apps today. If you're interested, run the ingredients through an app and go to town.
Hey, do you care if I read this?
Yeah, read.
Okay, because I want my listeners to. This is one of my favorite meals. I swear, God has a sense of humor.
Uh-oh.
Because I would not touch a Brussels sprout.
Yes.
Growing up, and now it's one of my favorite.
Now you
meals.
love it.
So he has a recipe in here for habanero Brussels sprouts, and I had Brussels sprouts for lunch today. So sorry about my breath, but
Hi.
This is what we're gonna get. A half a cup of a quarter cup olive oil, 2 habanero peppers, 2 cloves garlic, 1.5 pounds whole Brussels sprouts, 4 strips of bacon, Himalayan sea salt, and black pepper. That's it.
Any weird ingredients in there?
You
can buy all those in the grocery store.
Right. That's it. It's simple. You can name all the ingredients. They're whole food. And honestly, they're actually...
Quick cook time, too.
It's 4 servings, 15 minutes, prep time, 25 minutes, cook time, ready for supper. And honestly, when olive oil has such benefits, health benefits. The garlic has wonderful health benefits.
Inflammation lowering.
And really, habanero peppers, anything with capsaicin or capsicum has...
There's people take capsicum pills all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Be careful.
Do you do that?
Yeah, I used to.
Does it burn your insides?
You have
feel
to acclimate. You have to acclimate. You might start out with like 10,000
You'd be like,
units. Yeah, and then work your way up. But the thermogenic effect
is real.
Is real.
Yeah, you start sweating.
Yes.
Don't go in the sauna after you take one of those.
No, don't do that. What, do you have a favorite recipe in here of your own? Do you?
Dude, that's like asking who my favorite child is. Heather just did a bang-up job in there. I was very proud of that. And I love, too, that we have meal plans that uses these recipes. So we have a 4-week keto meal plan in there, a 4-week dairy-free meal plan in there as well. So people say, help guide me. How do I just start with the first? No, we give you like specific page numbers and everything with the meal plans. My favorite part was to go through the front matter because I didn't want to just regurgitate what I did in Keto Clarity. I wanted it to be brand new information. And as we alluded to earlier with the KETO and each of the beginnings of the chapters, we wanted it to be something fresh and new because you remembered the original KETO. So maybe each of these KETOs help you realize all these points. And we emphasized not just the carbohydrate restriction, not just the protein moderation, not just the high fat, but emphasizing real food and emphasizing all those other things on top of food that can impact your health.
Chapter 4, optimize your diet by choosing mostly real food. I'm glad you said mostly. What did I say? 80%.
Yeah.
Okay. So the KETO of Chapter 4 is know where your food comes from. Man, I like that. That bolsters farmers markets. And,
it does. And they're bursting at the seams.
Blowing up.
Yes.
I love it. So know where your food comes from. Eat mostly whole foods. Take time to savor your meals and overwhelm your body with nutrient density. That's the KETO of Chapter 4. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that, especially that T. Take time to savor your meals. We don't talk a whole lot about that,
No.
but on this podcast we do, when we talk about gratitude.
Yes.
And studies have shown how it helps aid in digestion.
It does.
When we show a little bit of gratitude and savoring those meals, not rushing through there.
Right.
So anyway, this book is, when does it drop? When does it come out?
It's June the 18th, 2019. And so it's coming out.